The emergency klaxon had been silent for 3 cycles now, and Rhea Morgan was beginning to think that was a problem in itself. In her 14 months aboard the Sanctuary, the interspecies rescue vessel, quiet meant trouble was brewing somewhere in the habitation sectors. She found the source of the silence on Deck 7. The Vraken cubs, all 11 of them, had vanished from their assigned quarters. Their species liaisons were in a state of barely controlled panic. The Vraken were apex predators from a world where mercy translated roughly to delayed consumption, and their young were considered dangerous enough that most stations refused to harbor them. The cubs on Sanctuary were war orphans, rescued from a colony bombardment, and their presence was already a diplomatic nightmare. Rhea checked her datapad, scanning for thermal signatures. The cubs registered hotter than humans, their metabolism burning bright even at rest. She tracked the cluster of heat blooms to an access corridor that technically didn't exist on the official schematics, one of the 100 maintenance gaps that riddled the aging vessel. When she squeezed through the narrow hatch, Rhea stopped breathing. They'd built a den. The maintenance bay had been transformed. Human blankets, the soft, fleece-lined kind from the crew quarters, had been draped, folded, and woven into an elaborate nest that filled half the chamber. Emergency foam padding lined the walls. Glow strips, carefully removed from other sections, provided soft amber lighting. In the center, the cubs had piled every pillow they could steal into a mountain of softness. And there, standing guard at the entrance, was Takor. The eldest cub was barely chest-height to Rhea, but his obsidian scales caught the light like napped flint, and his eyes, triple-irised and gold, fixed on her with predatory focus. His claws, each as long as her thumb, extended slightly. A warning. "Takor," Rhea said softly, keeping her hands visible and non-threatening. "What did you do?" The cub's translated speech crackled through his collar device. "Made safe. Made. Good." He struggled with standard, his people's language having no equivalent for what he was trying to express. Behind him, smaller cubs stirred in the blanket nest. One emerged, dragging a fleece throw twice her size, and curled against Takor's flank. Another cub, barely a month old, was completely wrapped in what Rhea recognized as her own comforter from her quarters. "You've been stealing blankets," she said. It wasn't a question. Takor's head dipped, a gesture his people used to acknowledge truth. Soft. Warm. Not hard. Not cold. He touched the wall with one claw. And Rhea understood. The standard Vraken quarters were designed to their species specifications. Bare metal, harsh lighting, hard surfaces that could be sanitized. Practical, sterile, lonely. "The others say Vraken don't nest," Rhea said, kneeling to put herself at Takor's eye level. "They say your people don't need comfort. Adults don't." Takor's voice carried something that the translator couldn't quite render. Perhaps longing. Perhaps defiance. "Adults are hard. Cubs need this." He gestured at the den with clear pride. Rhea looked at the construction more carefully. The blankets weren't just piled randomly. They were layered, creating pockets of varying warmth. The glow strips were positioned to avoid harsh shadows. The ventilation had been redirected illegally, but cleverly, to create air circulation that must feel like a gentle breeze. In one corner, the cubs had gathered their few possessions. Data tablets showing images of their destroyed homeworld, a few toys, and what looked like a collection of smooth stones. It was beautiful. It was a home. "The council is going to shut this down," Rhea said quietly. "They'll say it's a fire hazard. They'll say the cubs need to be in their assigned quarters where they can be monitored." Takor's scales rippled, darkening with what she'd learned was anxiety. "We are always watched. Always tested. They fear us." His claws scraped softly against the floor. "Here, we are just cubs." Rhea's throat tightened. She thought of the diplomatic briefings, the constant reminders that the Vraken were being harbored as a humanitarian gesture but were considered a risk, that their natural aggression needed to be managed. That integration was possible only if they abandoned what made them different. But cubs wrapped in soft blankets, building a nest together, protecting each other, that was universal. That was something Rhea understood in her bones. I need to report this, she said, watching Takor's eyes dim with defeat. But maybe I report it the right way. 2 hours later, Rhea stood before the sanctuary's command council, with her full report displayed on the holographic screen behind her. She'd documented everything: the blanket theft, the unauthorized den construction, the energy redirects, the security concerns. And then she'd added her own analysis. The Vraken cubs have created the first successful self-directed comfort environment in Sanctuary's history, she explained, watching the council members' expressions shift from annoyance to curiosity. Their stress hormones have dropped 47%. Aggressive incidents are down to 0. They're sleeping through the night for the first time since the rescue. Commander Yatish, a Thorian with more arms than patience, leaned forward. So you're suggesting we let them keep an illegal den built from stolen property? I'm suggesting, Rhea said carefully, that we made a mistake in assuming that predator species don't need comfort. We designed their quarters based on adult Vraken military specifications. But these aren't soldiers. They're children who watched their world burn. She pulled up images of the den, the carefully arranged blankets, the small collection of treasures. They're showing us what they need. Maybe it's time we listened. The debate lasted another hour. In the end, the council issued their ruling. The den would remain, but under supervision. It would be brought up to safety codes. The blankets would be fireproofed. And this was the part that made Rhea's eyes sting. The sanctuary would be installing comfort stations throughout the vessel for all species who needed them. When Rhea returned to Deck 7, she found Takor waiting outside the hatch, his posture rigid with anticipation. You can keep it, she told him. We're making it official. Your den stays. Takor's scales rippled through a color shift she'd never seen before, iridescent gold washing across obsidian. Joy, she realized. Pure joy. Thank you, Rhea Morgan, he said, then paused. You are? Pack? Rhea smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Yeah, Takor. I guess I am. The cub reached out, carefully, and touched her hand with the pad of his palm claws deliberately retracted. A gesture of trust from a species that trusted no one. Inside the den, the other cubs were stirring, emerging from their blanket fortress to see what the commotion was about. Takor turned to them and made a chittering sound that the translator didn't catch. But Rhea understood anyway. We're safe. We're home. We're staying. And for the first time since the rescue, the cubs of Vraken didn't look like weapons being contained. They looked like what they were. Children who'd found a soft place to land in a universe that had tried to tear them apart. 3 months later, the den on Deck 7 had a name in Standard: the Soft Place. It had a waiting list. And somewhere in the regulations of the Interspecies Rescue Coalition, there was a new provision that stated simply, all rescued juveniles are entitled to comfort appropriate to their developmental needs, regardless of species classification. The humans called it the blanket provision. But the Vraken, when they spoke of it in their own language, called it something that translated roughly to the law that remembered we were children once. And Takor, eldest cub and guardian of the den, would spend the rest of his long life ensuring that no child, predator or prey, aggressive or gentle, would ever be denied the simple dignity of softness again.